Today we're talking about testing and assessment, and we have a stellar lineup, a galaxy of people to talk about this subject, very knowledgeable folk. And I am not going to talk for too long because I want to hand over and get to the meat of this day today. You should all have 2 sheets upon which you've got the program. There are some other bits and pieces as well. A flyer from British Council about our new Learn English Teens website. So this is an addition to the suite of websites for learners and teachers. In case you don't, this pack contains a snapshot of 3 of those websites with a very limited amount of the resources that are available, limited by the size of the disk. The websites themselves offer a much wider range of resources. The Teaching English website has lesson plans, handouts, even books that you can download. There are seminars which are conducted in the UK, recorded and then rebroadcast, and so you can watch, you can take part in these seminars. There's lots and lots of professional development opportunities on the Teaching English website. The orange one, that's for kids. I'm sure most of you have seen that before. I've shown you bits of that before, and I've told you the story about how my children love this website, and you're tired of hearing me talking about my children, I'm sure. Then the green one, that's the adults. That's the Learn English for Adults website. So you've got a snapshot of each of those websites on these discs. You also have, kindly offered by Lisa Morgan, the Regional English Language Officer of the US State Department, the Forum magazine, which is for teachers of English, so you should each have a copy of that. If you don't, all of these publications are available at the back. There are many ways of staying in touch with teacher training development opportunities. Obviously, the Teaching English website is the British Council's main port of call, but we have recently started a Facebook page for the English project in Egypt. We realized, having got feedback from teachers, that an email was not the best way of staying in touch with people, and that many people use Facebook as a communication tool. So we have started a Facebook page. It's called English for the Future Teacher Network. Alternatively, you could put my email address, my professional email address, into Facebook. So that's neil.winston@britishcouncil.org.eg, and then you can make friends with me. I'm not trying to expand my friend base. It's a way of getting you to join the group, because the group is a closed group. It's not available for just anybody. You have to request an invitation and be invited into the group. English for the Future Teacher Network. But you can, it's easier just to make friends with me. There we go. An endorsement. Excellent. Thank you. And on that page, you will get up-to-date and sometimes the first news about any kinds of opportunities or announcements. So, for example, the Teaching English website was hosting seminars live from the UK this week about special educational needs. And I posted that on the Facebook page. Therefore, any members got the alert, probably in their email inbox or on their telephone. Any number of ways you can do this, but then people can then just click on the link and take part in the seminar, and a very interesting one. And these things take place very regularly, and I will be posting them on the Facebook page. So please join our Facebook group, tell your friends and colleagues, and invite some more people. Now, you might have noticed at the back all this technology that's going on up there. I think you probably know about this anyway in advance, but we're quite excited that the team at the back are going to be filming and streaming live on the internet this event. So I've just realized that I'm probably live on the internet now. I'm getting nervous. There could be millions of people watching, oh well, dozens of people watching me. So that's what's happening at the back. I'm going to post the link to this live stream on the Facebook page. So that's the kind of news you'll get on the Facebook page. If you can't make it to one of these events, this is something that we hope to do forevermore, I think. For every one of these events, we will hopefully be streaming, and you can pick up the link from the Facebook page. Right, so it's nearly 10 o'clock. I am going to be quiet now and introduce the first of our speakers, my colleague, Eric Atkinson, who is the Regional English Manager for English and Education Systems in the British Council. So Eric is responsible for British Council work with ministries of education, universities, etc., throughout the entire Middle East and North Africa region. So he has quite a set of responsibilities there, and I wouldn't swap jobs with him. Shall I get you on? Yeah.
So good morning. Brief introductions again. I'm Eric Atkinson, and as Neil was explaining, I am the Regional English Project Manager for the British Council. So I'm responsible for all the English project work that we do in the Middle East and North Africa, spreading from Morocco across North Africa, the Levant, the Gulf states. So it's quite a large area to cover. Just to introduce myself again, I've been involved in language teaching for about 25 years. Particularly if you're talking about testing, I spent 6 years testing and assessment. I spent 6 years working with the military testing boards of Poland and the police testing boards in that country as well, helping them to set up language test boards, designing tests with them, training them in test writing, and basically making sure they delivered tests correctly. So quite a strong background, but several years ago now, so I'm revisiting old territory here. The reason why you have the Yorkshire Dales on the screen here is because for two reasons. The next year's NileTESOL in England is going to be in Harrogate, which is right next to the Yorkshire Dales. And secondly, actually Harrogate's my hometown. So I'm an unofficial salesperson for the Yorkshire Dales National Park. I don't get paid anything, but if you are going to the NileTESOL conference in Harrogate, or if you do have an opportunity to go to England, please remember this beautiful Yorkshire Dales National Park. Very easy to get. This is my playground as a small boy. Okay. The whole day is about testing and assessment. And so I'm very happy and very pleased that this is the focus of the attention today. These are very important areas in English language teaching. We all know the importance if we have tests that teachers like to know the test very well and they teach to the test. So it's a very strong effect on the teaching that goes on in the classroom. Syllabus, material, methodology. And one of the reasons why I worked very strongly with the language testing boards of the Polish military was that if we could look at how their tests were created and help them create them in a certain way, we would influence what happened when they started to teach English. So that is one of the reasons why it's important there. The other reason is testing and assessment are both, in a way, reflecting on our teaching. You know, if everybody appears to do very poorly according to our tests and assessments, then our bosses aren't very happy about it. So that's a second reason. There is a third reason as well why testing and evaluation and assessment is important. It's because we're actually saying that a person can do something. We're actually sort of ticking to say that person is able, they can do something. Now, if we get that wrong, you know, it can have consequences. Now, in most examples, it's not very difficult, it's not very serious consequences. But if you remember, I worked for the Polish military test board. If you asked somebody to suggest that they were competent in military English and they made a mistake, consequences can be quite severe. There was an example. There is a terminology in military English which is FLOT, F-L-O-T, forward line of your own troops. Yeah? You must know this terminology, and people say FLOT is at these coordinates. So when you are a general or a colonel on a battlefield, you know where the end of your troops are. That's very important, because if you're launching a bombardment, you want to make sure this goes beyond the forward line of your troops. There was a military exercise where a colonel from a country I shall not name did not know what this word was and ended up, fortunately it was an exercise, bombarding his own troops. So, you know, there are serious consequences if you are mislabeling somebody. Well, probably that's the most extreme case I can think of. So that's why I think testing assessment is important. My little bit, I'm just going to be introducing the two terms, talking very generally about what is testing, what is assessment, all those different things. A little bit incidences of when we use them and why we use them, and the different strengths and weaknesses of each one. So that's my general talk of today. But I thought I'd begin with a little warmer for you. This is something for you to think about. What do you think and feel when you hear the word test? Think for a moment to yourself, then turn to a neighbor and tell your neighbor what you think of when you think of the word test. Tell your partners here. As a learner, as a test taker, yeah? Somebody who takes the test. Can I just take one or two comments from the floor? So, when we are thinking about tests, what do you think or feel when you hear the word test?
Stressful sometimes and panic.
Stressful, panic, yeah?
I get excited
Excited. Great, wonderful.
now, but when I was young, I used to get scared.
Oh, scared when you're younger.
I feel glad I'm not the one being tested. So it's time to relax.
Not me today. Yes. That's very good. Yeah, I mean, now we take. So, I mean, generally, I thought of a few things as well, and I'm sure they're not too dissimilar. This is tenderly, if you say test to someone, they're scared, nervous, anxious. Have I prepared enough? Will I fail? So I'm we have quite negative feelings about tests. And actually, occasionally we have positive ones, which is very good. I'm one of those strange people who likes to do tests. I say to myself, well, it's a chance to test, to challenge myself. You know, if I do badly, well, it shows me I've got lots of things still to learn. It makes me humble. If I do well, isn't it wonderful? I'm fantastic, yes? So I'm one of those odd people who actually have a positive view to tests. But the majority, the vast majority, have a negative view of tests. So I'm going to ask the same question about assessment. The same procedure. What do you think and feel when you heard the word assessment? Think to yourself and then tell a neighbor. Okay, so can I again just take some views from the floor? What do you feel when you hear the word assessment? What do you think or feel about this? It's difficult, isn't it? There's evaluate, yes. Yeah. Determining what they should be doing to do. Anybody else would like to contribute?
Well, for me it's a bit confusing because I really try to think what kind of assessment caters to the need of this particular group of students. So it's to a point a bit confusing.
Confusing,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes, actually there's a difference between assessment and evaluation. We work to educate the students. When we hear assessment, we should work for assessment, especially ongoing assessment. After that, they will evaluate even what they have, what they have been taught through assessment. Yes, you are.
So it's a very positive view of
Yes.
assessment there, and a more clearer idea of what it is, and it's ongoing, and it should be looked at positively. Yeah.
You know, I think testing is something I would also have as a final after I finish my course, but assessment is something, it's a process of learning, during the process of learning itself. So a little bit, I don't have this frightened, the feeling of fear or scaring, because learning is mistakes. So I expect, to have learners make mistakes during, so assessment is different from testing.
So we're beginning to have some differentiation between testing and assessment, and when it's done, something at the end, a test and assessment. Can I just take one more from this person's had her hand up for a long time?
I think assessment is more beneficial than testing because you always receive feedback.
Okay. Again, the sense of a quite well-educated audience who have got quite a lot of the points I'm going to be making, which is very, very good to have. So you're beginning to foreshadow ideas that I'm going to be talking about. But generally, when I think about assessment, these are the kinds of things I think about, how can I puzzle? I mean, what do I have to do? What is an assessment? And it's a much harder term to actually think about and to have a reaction to. Yeah? It's not the same. And there is a good reason for that somebody mentioned there. But I found that most people, if you ask the general public about tests and testing, they will have a reaction. They know what it is. If you ask them about assessment, there'll be less of a certainty of a response. There's a lot less of a certainty of what it's about. Now, it's important that we understand what the general public think of these terms, because the parents of our children are the general public, and they will have a say on assessment or testing, and they need to be able to understand these terms or have a clear view of it in order for you to support when you do assessment, when you do testing. So it's important that it is a confusing term to the general public. It's not as clear as a test. Another little warmer for you, to get you to think about testing and assessment. And think about your own personal experiences here. There are lots and lots and lots of, not just think about education, don't just think about English, think about all the different types of tests there are out there, or all the different types of assessments there are. Think about the types of tests you've taken. The times when you've done assessment or you've been assessed. And again, when you have some ideas to think about, some experience to talk about, turn to your partner and tell about the tests I've taken, the assessments I've done or had done. Again, share your experiences of these. Okay, again, I'm sorry to cut you short like this. I know you're very interactive, sociable people, and you could probably speak to each other all day long. But I just need to move things on a little bit from here. So just again, taking from you different types of tests that you've taken. So what kind of tests have you taken before, or assessments?
I took the TKT exam, and I was prepared for myself for that, and I took it.
So the teacher's knowledge test, so a professional test for teachers. Any other kinds of tests we've taken?
We were talking about comprehensive exams at the end of our master's and PhD programs. And
I'm starting to shake already.
But also what came up is we were talking about, like, did that feel more like an exam or a test or an assessment?
I think when you talk about exams, what you're talking about is a super form of test. Really, it's kind of beefed up Superman of tests is an exam.
I remember a very tough assessment. It's TOT, TOT for abroad trainer teachers. It's very difficult because it assists skills in presenting.
So training of teachers type of training, professional again. Can I ask a little bit? We are focusing a lot on language and teaching and things like that. But actually, in our lives generally, we have all kinds of tests. So any examples of different types of tests? Exactly. Driving test. We take driving tests, yeah? Other kinds of tests that we have. ISELT tests. Oh, computers. Yes, computer tests. Yeah?
Also, I have one called FAIL-B. It's related to human resources and psychology. It's FAIL-B.
Fail me, it's a psychology test. IQ tests as well, yes? Well, obviously I had a lot of time to think of this beforehand, so I came up with quite a lot of different things as well. So these are kind of different types of tests that we have in our life, yeah? We can have medical tests, you know, blood tests, x-rays, you know, all kinds of tests we have, medical tests. Professional tests like the TKT test, or tests for accountants, or engineers, or doctors, yeah? They all have to have these professional tests. If I want to be a lawyer, I need to have a test, and I need to go and get a qualification. It's an exam, but an exam is a superman of tests. It's a test. Mechanical tests. Now, we need to test an aeroplane to see if it's going to fly properly. I'm going home tomorrow. I'm flying twice. So I hope to test the aeroplanes well. They are mechanical tests, mechanically sound. And also, I hope the engineer has checked all the walls in the building here so that it works fine. I also hope that the bridges that we cross are also well tested. So there are all kinds of mechanical tests of things to see if they are good and sound. We have physical skills tests, which is basically a driving test. It's a physical skill test. Yeah? Fitness tests, yes? You know, are you healthy enough to do the job? Or in the British Council, there are certain parts of the world where it's actually quite dangerous to go to. And we need to pass a test of physical fitness, but also danger awareness and safety awareness, yeah? Before I can go and work in Afghanistan or Iraq or into Syria or where these dangerous places, I need to have a test of my physical skills as well. We also have personality tests, as we were talking about here, the psychology tests. Tests to say, what kind of person are you? What kind of intelligence do you have? Are you going to be suitable to do some things?
Communication and social skills.
Communication and social skills you need to have. You'll be very, very happy to know that pilots have to do a personality test. Yes. Very important. We can't have somebody going crazy on a pilot or flying a plane. So these are things. And we have school tests, education tests, yeah, which are kind of like, seems to be a whole set of something different from everything else. So those are different times. Now I'm going to refer back to this quite soon, because there's an important reason why we need to look at the different types of tests. And just to foreshadow that, because they each have a different purpose, yeah, we need to think about that purpose. I was trying to think about different types of assessments that we do. And the fact is, as human beings, we do assessments all the time. We make personal judgments. I come in the room this morning, I look at all the faces here, and I say, oh, well, that looks like an intelligent group of people. Yes, they look like all professional people, all knowledgeable, and I'm making that assessment of you based on visual information. I've got the fact that you're here. We also meet somebody the first time. We're making some assessment of them. We can't help it, we're human. We're assessing all the time. So those are the kind of personal judgments we make about people. Quite often in our life we have decisions to make. Shall I be a teacher or shall I continue to be an actor? I was an actor a long time ago. And I had to make that choice. Yes? And I have to assess this path. Shall I go along this path? What are the benefits? What are the problems? Shall I go this direction? What can I gain from that? And you make these kind of judgments. Or even on a much lesser, I mean, what school your child goes to. You know, these are kind of life choices we make. We need to assess evidence in order to make our life decisions. We have the personal judgments we make about people, and we have professional judgments we make about people. When we do an interview, I was recently interviewing. So Thursday, I was interviewing Thursday. There was a job we have as a project manager in Iraq. We had 3 candidates. I am assessing each candidate, looking at all sets of evidence, and that's a professional assessment. and making a recommendation of which of those three should get the job. So job interviews are professional assessments. And what we're looking at in terms of assessment is to move away, when we're assessing in education, move away from the personal judgments more towards the professional judgments. And when I'm thinking about I'm interviewing somebody, I don't make a personal judgment. I don't like the tone of voice. I don't like the kind of clothes that person wears. You know, I don't like it. No, I'm saying I've got some requirements. They need to have this professional experience, these qualifications, this experience, and I have a set of criteria on which to make an assessment. And that's where we're moving assessment away from the personal to the more professional, is when we start to use more clearly identified and thought about criteria, and we're applying them consistently across the number of people we do. So that's what we're moving towards. But I actually found it harder to come up with different types of assessment. And isn't it difficult to think about different types of assessment? And I think the reason why is, and I'm going on to the difference between the two. There isn't actually, in terms of concept, that much. Testing is a component of assessment. They're not two separate things. Assessment takes place as a general idea, and testing is one way of doing an assessment. They're not two different things. It's rather like fruit and apples. Assessment is the fruit and test is the apple. It's a kind of assessment. And I think that's probably why it's harder to come up with examples of assessment, because it's too generic a term. It's a very general term. And it's easier to come up with examples of testing because it's a very specific term. So, conceptually, testing is a part of assessment, one method of assessment. But generally speaking, education and English teaching do think of them as differently. So we need to look at the differences they are. Even though we know that one is part of the other, there are still differences. These are the definitions from the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. So tests are examinations of somebody's knowledge or ability, questions and activities. Interesting thing there, I think, are two things. Knowledge or ability. Knowledge or skill. So tests are not just tests of knowledge, they're tests of knowledge or ability, or if we want to term it, knowledge and skills. And they can be asked questions or do activities. And again, doing activities can be part of a test as well. So those are key things to pick out there. Tests can be of knowledge or skill, and they can have question and answer, or they can ask people to do activities. When you do a driving test, hopefully somebody's asking you to do some activity. Please drive your car. If it's just a paper and pen question and answer test, you've got a bit of a problem. Yeah. I'm sure I could pass that kind of test, but I'm not sure about the practical application. So that's what we have. We have an understanding in the education world that we think of tests and assessment differently. And just for a short bit, some of the kind of characteristics of tests that we have in language and in education. They tend to be done in one time frame, usually limited. You have 1.5 hours for this test. You have 15 minutes for this test. So we know we can identify tests, limited time frame. Usually a test is specially written. Even if it's by a teacher, doesn't appear, it isn't observing something. Something has been specifically written as a test, created as a test. The good tests, and most of them, will give a clear indication of what is being tested. You're going to be tested on your driving, you're going to be doing a reverse parking, you're going to do a three-point turn, and I can't remember, it's such a long time I did my driving test, but you'll be told what it is you're being tested, but not only what it is, but how you're going to be tested. So they're very kind of clear for those. You get a lot of people doing the same test in the same way, and quite often at the same time, which is a good thing for this universal standardization. So the Cambridge English tests are done all over the world, usually around about the same time, by very large numbers of people. And a very prominent feature of tests is that they have a result. If you can say the person's passed or failed, they've got 70%. They've got A, B, or C. You know? They've got 13 out of 20. So there's a score attached. And that's what people look at. The score is the important thing in a test. Yeah? Did you get more than 10 out of 20? And now we'll call that good. Or did you get 4 out of 20 and we'll call that need to improve. So those are things. Again, showing if you know or do something, and they're almost always formal in some way or other. Even if it's a class test, and there's an atmosphere in a class test. You say, everybody's got to sit down, be quiet, don't talk to your neighbor, start when I tell you, finish when I tell you. Even a class test is very formal. It's very interesting what those things have to students. This is what makes them tests scary and artificial and different, because I don't normally do these. Characteristics of assessment. I find it difficult there because it's such a broad field. Many assessments are not written. I don't come into a room and look at you and say, okay, now, are they dressed well? No, do they look like they're entertaining? Have they got smiles on them? I don't list my criteria for evaluating an individual when I meet them for the first time. But that's the informal aspect of assessment. When we start moving more formally into assessment, then those things start happening. Then you start having criteria there. So most of our unconscious assessments, and we make them all the time, are not written down anywhere. We don't have a written criteria list. We don't know even conscious what we are assessing. We just make judgments. We make these instantaneous judgments without criteria, not written down. And most of our judgments are of that nature, not written. I sometimes think with an assessment, you don't necessarily know what it is being assessed. A good assessment would be people doing things, not conscious that they're being assessed for a particular thing, but you're observing for specific examples of behavior. So the person taking the assessment or being assessed doesn't necessarily know they're being assessed or even what they're being assessed for, quite often, which is the counterpoint to tests. In all tests, we know what we are being tested for. In assessments, we quite often don't know. They involve evaluations. The last two I'd like to focus on for a while. They almost always are informal. I'll move on to explain why in a minute, because we actually do an awful lot of assessment. We're doing lots and lots of assessment, and almost all of it is informal. And they often involve the active participation of the learner in this. So, or they take place over a period of time. So if you think about tests and think about all those things about them being time-bound and specially written and formal and done by lots of people all over the same time, and think about what those are not, the opposites of those, and you get some idea of what assessments are. Yeah? Done over a period of time, involving individuals being assessed in different ways. We test everybody and assess everybody in the same way, large numbers of people. But you have the opportunity in assessment to look at them as individuals and assess individuals. Okay, we're going to go back to this list of tests, because now we're looking at what is the purpose of tests and what is the purpose of assessment. So first of all, the tests. These are a whole series of tests here that we've seen that happen in our real life. Now, again, I want you to think about, why are those tests being done? Why do we do these tests? And again, talk to your partner about this and exchange ideas. Why do people take physical skills tests? Why do people take why are the mechanical tests done? So you think about that for a while and exchange ideas with your partner. Again, I need to move things on a little bit. We are coming very much to the heart of what I want to be talking about today, because we can recognize a test and assessment, but we must also recognize different purposes for tests and assessment, and are we using them at the right time for the right purpose? So in terms of these, now thinking about tests generally, it gives us an idea of what the purpose of tests are for. So what is the purpose of a medical test?
To be assured about your health.
Well, you can get some confidence that your health is okay, but normally you do a medical test to diagnose something. Yeah? What something is not, I can observe something isn't right, and I'm going to diagnose something and make sure that it is right.
It's finding the reason why you're sick.
Finding the reason why you're sick, yes. So we have diagnostics, so there we diagnosis. Professional tests. Why do people do professional tests?
Job skills. I'm asked about job skills. How progress.
To test someone's job skills, but why are we testing them? The ability to do something, and why do we want to know that? There are two reasons: to promote the people who are good, and to stop the people who are not good from doing things. If there was no tests for medical students, I would be very worried if I went to a doctor. How do I know if that doctor's good enough to be a doctor? If there were no tests for engineers, how would I know that this building is safe? Yeah? This is stopping some people from doing things and allowing other people to do things. Yeah? Professional tests. Mechanical tests, so we don't fall, safety basically. No, the building's not going to fall down, the plane's not going to crash, the car's going to be okay. But also, can it be done, can it work better also? I mean, mechanical tests or, well, my car isn't working very well, it's not going to crash, but I want it to work more effectively. So I'll do a mechanical test to see if it works more effectively. Physical skills tests. As again, it's the ability of a person to do something. So a fireman test is, can I run up and down ladders? Can I carry heavy weights for a long distance? Can I go into confined spaces? So that kind of physical test is also a kind of test to see if I can do a certain job or not. Yeah? And I have to admit, I can't do any of those things. I can't climb ladders very quickly or carry large weights for long distances or live in confined spaces. So I would fail a fireman's test.
I think physical tests and personality tests go together.
Very often do. They very often are done in comparison. So the fire officer would also have a psychology test to see if they are going to panic or stay calm in stressful situations. So we have these to make diagnoses, to stop people from making people safe, physical skills tests. What's the purpose of school tests? Achievement, how much they know already or can do already. To get feedback on the students. There are a number. But I'm just going to go back again. This is the purpose of tests. We quite often say that tests are gatekeepers. And this is for the professions. And also for people going to university. There's a test to get into university of some kind. It allows those people who are good at stuff to be able to do that, and it prevents the people who are not very good at them to do it. This is a vitally important part of testing, and one very good reason for testing. Thinking about your students, what are you going to allow them to do if they pass the test? Or is that a relevant purpose for tests in schools?
To motivate students, as you mentioned here. If they pass the test, they can move to a higher level, they can go to the next stage.
That when we're moving into more kinds of school-based testing. But as a purpose of a gatekeeper, well, we're not in the business of stopping people doing things in school. So I don't think we need them to be gatekeeper. We don't need to stop them from doing things. There's only one point I think they probably need a gatekeeper type test for the purpose of that.
To define the learner style, to put the children where he needs to be.
Yep. This is more like the diagnosis. Yeah? You're using tests. We're looking at which of these purposes are suitable for using in schools. Well, I would suggest that the gatekeeper purpose is not really that suitable.
Yes, it's to ensure that all those at a level all belong to the same level, so we don't have varieties.
which fits into the kind of diagnostic thing as well. Yeah. Just.
And to promote students from one year to another to make sure that they succeed so they can move to the next year and so on.
In a sense, that's a gatekeeper because it is saying you're not good enough to advance to the next level, but that's different. I'm going to have to move on, and I'd like to spend all day on this, but I've got another 15 minutes, so if you allow me to move on. I think the purposes of tests which are, well, obviously there's no reason for safety reasons. If we are doing tests in schools, more likely for diagnostic reasons, demonstrating learning. But are there different ways of doing that? Motivating students. This is an often underlooked reason for doing tests in schools, because I have a test, I know it's going to be important, I know the result's going to be reported to my parents, I'm going to work hard. Yeah? So there's a kind of motivational effect of tests. There's also a sense that if I do good, I'll get praise from my parents as well. So there are some positive things about tests in schools. There's a lot of negativity about it, but the motivation factor is an important one. Now, maybe that should be because people and the students are ingrained with the idea that tests are important. If we change their thinking and make them think that other ways of assessment are equally important, can we again change the motivation factor so they're motivated to take part in assessment as well? So those are things to think about. So even the strong points for doing tests can be done in different ways. We can motivate students and demonstrate learning and make diagnosis, not only with a test, but with other ways. So what does that leave us in terms of why we do tests in school? Well, yeah, okay. The gatekeeper thing is an important one. So I'm thinking about this kind of purposes again, and when do we do them and why do we do them? So the kind of gatekeeper test that we have to stop people doing jobs that they don't need, if we do them at all, maybe only at the very end of their education, we do that kind of, we have that reason for testing at the very end. Because they're leaving the world, they're going to go out into the employment or a higher education, and we need to be able to stop those people going to study English who are never going to be able to do it, or make sure they do more learning before they take a job. So I think the gatekeeper purpose probably only at the end of the school age. The demonstrate learning purpose for tests, maybe at the end of the school year we just need to make sure that we have demonstrated that the students have learnt something by a test. And there is. Diagnostic reasons for testing. Well, I would suggest there are better ways than testing to be able to do that. Purpose of assessment. Getting a complete view of a student's abilities. If you looked at a test, tests look at partial knowledge that's taken in one time. Yeah? If I do a test at the end of the semester, I'm testing just one time period, and I'm testing what they know at that one time period. Assessment, because it's quite often done in a continuous way over a period of time, allows you to give a complete view of the student's abilities over a number of weeks, months, and also over a range of abilities. Tests tend to focus on small section of language that you're testing. They're also fairer to students, because we all know the idea that you've got a test day and you end up nervous and sick and you never perform to the best of your ability, so they're basically unfair. Understanding why people are succeeding or failing. Assessment by its nature is more long-term, more continuous, more in-depth. It takes a wider range of skills to do, and it's not to end up with a result of A, B or C or 60-70% or fail or pass. It's saying, well, let me look a bit closer. I can see over a period of time that person is not learning to read very well, and I suggest it's because they're not spending enough time reading, therefore I will change the amount of time they do reading. So by an assessment, we're more able to understand why things are succeeding or failing, because we've got a longer term engagement. They tend to include the students because good assessments will be asking students to do things, bring them into you, and you'll be saying, I'm monitoring your progress, I'm working with your progress, I'm working with you all the time, and involve them. And the thing about assessment is that they generally are more geared to help students to learn.
Sorry, sir. Can we say to help students to be engaged in learning process, not to learn to be engaged?
I recognise the fine hair splitting going on there, but if you engage them more, they're going to learn more.
Yes.
Yeah, so one presumes the other. Yes. If you get them more engaged in their learning, because they're in a longer term assessment when they're doing things all the time, they are conscious of their progress. They can then take an active part in their progress. I know I'm succeeding here and not there. I'll do more work here or there. And all these things help students to learn generally. So why and when do assessment? Gives you a wide range of information about the student, which helps you teach them better. Right? And when? All the time. And the fact is, we do this all the time. Tests give you a snapshot of a person's ability at one particular time. You may test 5 or 6 times or whatever. You might get lots of snapshots. But basically, they're only telling you this person can do this much at that. But even then, that's not particularly true. It tells you they can do something, but they don't tell you how close are they to be able to do something. And we all know in language, this is one of the common failings of tests. Do I understand, can I read this kind of text? Can I understand, can I speak in that kind of way? Well, we all know that you emerge. Do I have this range of language? We all know that it doesn't suddenly sort of, one day you have it, the next you don't. Or one day you don't, and the next you have. It doesn't work that way. It emerges over time. So you might 50% know something, 80% know something. Luckily, 100% knows something. And the test will only tell you, does the 100% know or 100% doesn't know? It doesn't tell you, do they 40% know it? So it doesn't tell you what stage of learning development they are.
And sometimes students are really nervous in tests. They know the stuff and they can't perform during tests.
Yeah, it's unfair on some people. They can't show what they can do because they're too nervous. Tests gives you snapshots of what people can do at a particular time, and not a particularly good snapshot because it doesn't tell you how close they are to achieving something.
I think assessments can help me to modify my curriculum, because sometimes I know different users, for example, using techniques, okay, teaching techniques, okay, I can change the technique in order to be able to know the standard of the level of my student. Okay, so I think, assessment help you to modify and change my way of teaching.
It's a very important point. There's no point in doing assessments unless it does some change. We can assess and we can write reports, but if we don't actually change what we do in the classroom, then there's no point in doing it. So assessment does lead to positive change. Change resources, change methods, so you will make things better, so it will change. And let's say we do assessment all the time. We have lots of informal assessment. There is not one teacher in the entire universe who doesn't assess students, almost constantly. You're teaching something, you're looking at faces and saying, is that person understanding me? Is that person engaged? So at the very small level, you're making informal assessments about engagement. And then I go and look at somebody's work here, and I'm making, is that person, you know, I don't think they've quite caught it because their notes don't demonstrate. Then I listen to people doing a conversation, and I'm saying, you know, I don't think they don't have that vocabulary yet. That's why they're struggling. So I'm going to give them that new vocabulary. So in a sense, all our classroom, every teacher is alert to the classroom. Every teacher is aware of the classroom and what's going on there. So there's constant informal assessment in our classroom activities all the time. We do it. And it's informal most of the time. We don't record it anywhere. So there's nothing unusual about assessment. It's very common. And we do assessment informally in terms of giving homework and monitoring homework and giving feedback on homework. So that level of informal assessment is constantly happening. And it's a very, very good thing because you're adjusting your teaching according to what's going on. I see that these 3 students here, or the majority of students, don't understand the task. Let me stop the task and let me re-say it again. Or I understand this group of students here are having problems with understanding that text. I need to support them. I'll get these guys who are good here to talk with these people over here, and they're going to change and help them and improve their ability to learn. So we're constantly assessing and changing our activity because of it, in a very informal way. And it's only one step further to make that informal assessment more formalized when we need to do it. We do it over a period of time. We test the full range of skills and knowledge. We do a lot of variety of tasks. They are similar, if not identical, to classroom tasks. If we have good skills-based, communicative-based activities in the classroom, these are our source of assessment of students' abilities. So we don't need to learn new skills to be good at assessing students. We need to be conscious of how we do it informally. Maybe we should start paying a little bit more attention to what we are looking at, making those unconscious judgments more conscious. Instead of having unwritten criteria, we start to write them down a bit. So that's when we're starting to turn the informal assessment we do into formal assessment. And we have the skills already, if we're good teachers, to do informal assessment. We need to just move it on from that unconscious stream of consciousness activity doing in the classroom to formalize it. Yes? And we can get various things can happen. We can get students to do writing portfolios. We can do designated speaking, listening, speaking, reading tasks for assessment. So, okay, formalizing it, I might do pair work speaking activities quite often. I might just say, okay, once a week I'm going to make this one. I'm going to actually make it, I'm going to record this one a bit better. I'm going to write down my opinion of it. I'm going to make a formal assessment of that particular one. And you might actually let the students know, or you might not let the students know. But you let them know that I am constantly observing what you're doing in the classroom, and this is going to come up with my final assessment opinion or grade or whatever it is that I give. So assessment is not difficult for teachers. They do it all the time, and it's a question of turning the informal way we do it into a more formal way when we want to change from tests all the time to informal assessment all the time. I'm almost about to finish. Just to summarize, I've been trying to identify what the difference between tests and assessment are. I've been trying to get you to think about purposes for tests and assessment, and to think about, are the purposes for tests in school tests, what purposes do we have in school tests? Are they so important? Do we have to do that? We don't need to be gatekeepers. We don't need to have safety tests. If we want to do diagnosis, we can do it other ways. Yeah? So there are some very important times when we have to do tests. Very important to demonstrate, to make sure we before they leave school, they've got a very good reflection of what skills they have. But anyway, things that are wrong with tests. They're stressful. We all started with that this morning. They only assess a small range of knowledge and skills because your test is time-bound. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. When I was writing tests with the Polish military test board, we had 3 tests and a speaking test. No, 3 hours, two. Altogether, it was about 9 hours of testing. And even that was we could only look at a very small amount of knowledge and skills they had. So tests can only test a very limited amount of things. It can only be done at one point in time. And this is the other thing about tests. They're quite often in a format that are unfamiliar to students. And we've got things like gap fill exercises, find the heading for the paragraph, multiple choice things. I mean, it's a kind of, unless you introduce exam practice in the usually they're formats that are not familiar to students and also not ever done in real life as well. So when was the last time you had to do a gap activity in real life? Fill in the, here's your newspaper today. We've left some of the words out. Here are the words below. Fill in the words. We never do that in real life. They very rarely show us what's going right or wrong, formal tests. There's very little use in helping us to develop a student's ability. Because they tell us what they know and what they don't know, but they don't tell us how close are they to knowing something or doing something. They don't tell us how far are they. So we can't, and they don't tell us why can't they do it. Because they don't tell us where they are, and they don't tell us how they're failing or succeeding. They're not really much help in us to help students' abilities. Tests are very difficult to write well. If you look at a Cambridge exam, it takes 2 years to write. And there is a bunch of very serious PhDs in testing that are involved in the creation of it. And they test them out many, many times and pilot them many times. Good tests are difficult to write. Bad tests are very easy to write and are very common. And the problem with bad tests is they give you not very much information, and they quite often tell you the wrong things. There's probably about 15, 16 checks of a reading text you need to make to see if it's a good reading text. And quite honestly, most people don't have that knowledge or skill to do that. So quite often, no matter what the best intention of teachers are, the tests they produce are not very good. And they're very often done for the wrong purposes. We try and diagnose with a test. Well, if I want to know how well is a student doing and why are they doing it well or badly or how far are they towards learning it, there are much better ways than doing a test. Yeah. But very often, it's the one things, they don't involve a learner. And this, to me, is the real thing, is that you tend to be a guinea pig that goes into a test and is unfamiliar to you, and I do it, and I might get some feedback later, but I'm not really involved in the process of being assessed. And the alternative, why is assessment better? It's not stressful. Usually because you do something all the time, you know, you're regularly being assessed. You get familiar with it. You get used to it. It's just normal, yeah? They assess a much wider range of skills and knowledge and ability because you're doing it over a long period of time. You can choose all the different things you want to do. They usually are, the best ones are doing tasks the students are familiar with. So you're assessing on normal classroom activities that they do. Your assessment is based on, I want to see if these people can, how well are these people talking, how can they interact with each other, what's going wrong. I'll set up a normal classroom interaction that I normally do. The students are familiar with it. It's more likely to be real life, and therefore less stressful. You're more likely to get a better result because of that. Oh, I forgot one of the bad things about tests. In the preceding slide, tests usually dominate teaching. Usually. Because this is what the parents and the head teachers all want. I want my students to pass the test. So as teachers, we teach to the test. And if your test is entirely grammar or lexically based, you will focus on grammar and lexis. Assessment will free teachers from being slaves to the test. No more slaves to tests. Freedom. Yeah? They also involve the learner and they support learner. So I need to finish now. I've gone over my time by a few minutes. But generally speaking, I hope to have just basically introduced concepts of testing and assessment, talk through differences, purposes, when to do things, why not to do things, and why is something good or not. This is a start. This is an introduction to your day. Throughout the rest of the day, you'll have other speakers who have great knowledge of assessment, and I hope this will start you off with a big introduction to the theme. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Before we move to the second presentation, I'd like to remind you that NileTESOL, in collaboration with the British Council, is offering an opportunity for 3 online courses, for free, for the attendees of this event. All what you have to do is to go back after this day to the school or the university in which you are teaching, and you have 2 options: either to replicate one of the workshops here to the local audience in your institution, or to use one of the resources, online resources offered by the British Council, to use one of these resources in the classroom, and you should provide some kind of evidence for doing this, either a 3 or 5 minute recording of the session which you replicated, or the lesson you gave using the online resources. We have 3 online courses with a strong possibility of increasing them for the audience for the attendees of this event. Actually, because we offered this at our previous event, but we didn't get many entries, I mean. So there is a strong possibility that these scholarships or these grants are increased to up to 5 grants. So we strongly encourage you to do this. You will find all the details about the online course in the email we sent you announcing the event. So if you go back to the email, you will find all the details you need to know about the course and about what you need to do. By the way, you can also, instead of submitting a video recording, you can submit some kind of a teacher journal, yeah, reflecting on this experience of replicating a workshop or giving a lesson using the online resources. So we are expecting to receive your entries The deadline for receiving the entries is January 15th. Okay, so you have 1 month to do this and to provide some evidence for doing this. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it aligned with the 3 offered in the previous conference
No.
in Alexandria, or it is the same?
Okay, we are talking about 3 scholarships, okay? But if we find that we have many entries and many of these entries qualify, there is a strong possibility of increasing the number of grants because we haven't received many entries at Alexandria event. So now, let's move to our second session. Dr. Ata Gibril. Yeah? Sorry.
You want recordings or video?
Yeah, a video recording or some kind of a journal entry. You go and you replicate the session, or you go and give a lesson using one of these online resources, and you record this in your teacher journal, and there should be some evidence. If you are going to submit a teacher journal entry, there should be some photos of you giving the workshop or of you and your students during the lesson. I think it should be a video recording, okay? Yeah. Any questions about the scholarships? Yes? No, just only one session. Today we have 5 sessions, okay? All what you need to replicate is just one session. We will be thankful if you do one, okay? Yeah. Not all the sessions, just one, okay? Or the other option is you can design your own session using what has been said in more than one session, I mean. Now let's move to the second, yeah? Internet, yeah. Okay, we will be starting our second session in a minute, okay? Just we need to fix some issues. Okay, but let me introduce Dr. Ata Gibril. Dr. Ata Gibril is an associate professor at the American University, assistant professor at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Ata will be talking about debunking assessment methods or difficulties, sorry. And you can find a brief description of the session in the handouts you have. May I have your attention for a minute? Okay. Usually during these events, I make lots and lots of announcements, and you know, my job is to keep people busy until the yeah. NileTESOL and the British Council are promoting a voluntary ELT campaign, which is disabled friendly access, and this campaign. Thank you. This campaign is offering the opportunity for teachers to use different material, to raise the students' awareness of this issue of the people with mobility disability. If you go to the website of this campaign, we are offering the opportunity, we are offering all the information about the campaign in a minute. But if you go to the website of this campaign, you will find lesson plans, you will find graded reading texts, you will find different resources, videos and so on, in which you can use with your students in your classes to promote awareness or to raise awareness of this campaign or of this higher cause, which is about people with mobility disability. I'll pass a handout. You can just write your names. If you would like to receive all the information about this campaign, you will just write your name and email. and you will be receiving all the updates and the information about this campaign. Okay. The handout is here. Okay. Yeah. What you will find in this handout, you will find some space for your name and your email. If you are willing to receive some information about this campaign, just write down your name and email. Let me pause it.
I have a slide that you gave
Yeah,
me. I put
yeah.
it at the break time.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
It's at the very end of my
No problem.
presentation. I forgot to put it up.
No problem. It's
So
okay.
in the
Can you upload this PowerPoint presentation on the page if Mr. Nel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Certainly.
The recording will be there. Okay.
yeah.
So I received some questions about the scholarships. So if you have any questions about the online course scholarships, you are most welcome to ask. Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is the first time I know that we have French teachers here. Yeah. It's news to me.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it's okay. Yeah.
These are courses for teachers of languages, so it's entirely appropriate. The methodology from English teaching can be used in French, any foreign language, so absolutely, absolutely. As long as you speak English well enough, because the course is in English.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Actually, I won a prize at EUC NileTESOL, okay,
Yeah.
last January for this course, learning technologies, but until now I didn't receive anything.
Yeah. Okay. You can talk to Neil during the break, and he can help. Sure. Any other questions?
The name and the email?
Yeah. For the campaign, you just write your name and email, and you will be contacted by the campaign, and you will receive all the information about the campaign. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. No, if you are a teacher or a teacher trainer, it's okay. No problem. Yeah, it's okay. Since you are within the area of ELT. Okay. Yes? Pardon? Yeah. Yeah, again, maybe I was not clear enough. All what you need to do is one of two things. Either to go back to your school or university and you replicate, you give one of these workshops again to the teachers working in the institution where you work. Or you use one of the online resources, the British Council online resources, in one of your lessons, and you record this lesson, or you video record the lesson, or you video record the session, and you provide just a short clip up to 5 minutes from the lesson you have given or the workshop you have given. Again, the other option is to do the same, but instead of submitting the video, you go to your teacher journal and you reflect on this experience, and you send us the entry in which you are reflecting on the experience, supported by some photographs. These are the two options. But if you think of other ways for doing this, it's okay. So this is what we thought of, but if you have a new way, you are most welcome to do this. Yeah, I think I sent you the email of NileTESOL Professional Development Committee. You send an email and you send the entry as an email attachment, CCing Neil. I think you saw Neil's email at the beginning of the event. So you send the entry to the email of NileTESOL Professional Development Committee. The email, we have been communicating through this email over the past 2 weeks, I think. So this is the email to which you replied confirming your attendance today. So you use this email CCing Neil, okay?